Hello.
And welcome to
the Champagne Room Secrets Podcast. A podcast where two hilarious sex workers give you a peek behind the adult industry through personal anecdotes, content analysis, and sometimes interviews.
Sensational.
I am Candi / Barbie.
I'm Kitty, and we have a guest today. So, who are you?
My name is SYDNI DEVERAUX.
Welcome, SYDNI. Thank you so much for coming to our humble studio here, aka my home.
Thank you for having me.
How did you get into sex work? What was your first foray into the industry?
I actually started as a commercial plus size model back in the day. I had a contract and all that good stuff, but that was kind of boring to me.
Yeah.
And so during that period of time, I started getting really interested in SuicideGirls. And this was like a really long time ago. Like I was in college back in like the early aughts. God, I feel so old right now.
It's okay. It's okay.
You also have like most beautiful skin I've ever seen. So
Thank you.
Like,
I moisturize. But yeah, so I started kind of just being on the site and then I submitted. Eventually I was accepted.
Oh, okay.
So I'm an actual suicide girl. I have not shot in many, many years. So I'm sure that they'll like force archive me at some point, but I can still log into my account. I still get random messages from weird men. So every once in a while I'll go and like update just because like all of my photos look so different than how I do now. And I'll just like, hi, I'm actually a real person that looks way different now, you know? And
that's amazing. So you're the first person we've spoken to who actually got their photo shoots, I think, selected. So you got compensated for your work.
yes.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah,
Love to hear it.
It wasn't a lot back then, and
yeah.
it's still like not a lot, which kind of has kept me from wanting to continue to do that, right? But I was just really into like Irving Klaw and all of the old pinup stuff from, you know, like the 50s and 60s. And the Suicide Girl kind of thing was so DIY'd. It was so unique and they all looked so different. They had tattoos. They were into all sorts of different stuff, you know, and it wasn't like the typical Playboy thing, even though I loved Playboy. That's very much like a root for me. But like the Suicide Girl thing was like right up my alley.
Wow. Did you ever go into other publications like Playboy or Hustler, anything like that?
No. When OnlyFans started to kind of become a thing in Patreon as well, like I was featured in GQ as a sex worker prior to the pandemic though.
That's so rad.
Yeah, it's just like a
Wow.
little interview about like doing online stuff. That was kind of a nice little like, okay, like maybe people do see my stuff somewhere. Who knows?
What was it like in like the heyday of you working as a suicide girl?
So I wasn't a popular suicide girl, right? First and foremost, like put it out there. I wasn't white. I wasn't covered in tattoos and I wasn't like this big, you know? And like they were really into kind of that wafy thing. Back then, I don't really know what they're up to now because there's 800 million suicide girls. But like back when I got into it, I was in the early hundreds.
Oh my God. Wow. So you're like one of the first.
Yeah, I was like back in 2005.
Wow.
Yeah. But like they used to send us to like parties. So I went to raves as like a suicide girl.
Did they? Okay. So did they pay you for going to these events?
Yeah, but like not a lot.
Like $20?
Yeah.
A drink ticket? Oh,
Yeah.
we can relate.
You know, they're like wear some gear and like pass out some stickers and
So
like
you're kind of like an
dance
brand ambassador kind of vibe.
Yeah, but I just wanted to go to the rave.
Also, free party if you want to go, amazing, but probably
Yeah.
not enough for like a full-time job, like not like compensated like
Yeah.
that well.
And then, you know, they had the burlesque show and that didn't really interest me, but I ended up finding burlesque that way through being in the regional groups. This is back when you used to meet people on the internet. I mean, I think people still do, but it was very different. Like we were in groups and we would hang out with like fans, which were all like, you know, dudes. And we would surprise we would go play pool and go bowling and like, you know, play games and all of that stuff. And then one of them suggested we go to a burlesque show and I was like, great. And so that was kind of my weird hop. Like I've hopped around different forms of sex work. So I started with like dirty pinups.
Yeah.
And then I went into fancy stripping, burlesque, which is what that is.
Yeah.
And then I went into other sex work after that.
Did you ever ever do in-person sex work?
Yes. I started Burlesque in 2005, and then during that period of time, things with the economy was a little weird. It wasn't completely collapsed yet.
Yeah, we're getting there.
We're getting there. My chronology is long. But it was suggested to me like, hey, you know, are you interested in maybe like seeing clients in some sort of way that isn't like full service sex work? And I was like, that sounds kind of interesting. I had some friends that worked at the Lusty Lady in Seattle.
Oh, so cool.
In Seattle?
Yeah, because I was in Seattle at this time.
Wait, so there was multiple Lusty Ladies?
Yeah, at least two?
Yeah, because we've spoken to a few of the San Francisco
Yeah.
workers. So you were in Seattle Lusty Lady.
I wasn't in it, but I had friends that were working in the Lusty Lady there, and they were doing this work outside of the Lusty. They were working in a place called Sacred Temple. So it was like a big house down in Lake Union that had, I want to say 10 or 12 rooms. They were all differently themed. So they had different colors. So like this is wonderful because like you took all this time to like paint everything.
Yeah.
All the rooms were different. There was a fairy room. It was blue. It had fairies everywhere and twinkle lights.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
It had special sheets just for that room. Mm-hmm. There was the Egypt room that had like a giant statue of Anubis. It was painted black and it had gold stars on the wall. Gosh. And then there was the red room, there was a jade room, there all of these different rooms, right? So we could kind of pick the room that we would work in, and then it was a Jack Shack. However, we were trained to use energy.
Right.
It was all about balancing chakras.
Yeah.
With a friendly handshake at the end. You know, so it was a really interesting to be kind of trained in this way where they're like, you're a goddess, you know, we used to have to wear those wraps that you could like sarong. Oh. Yeah, so we didn't wear anything else. We just wore a sarong, whatever color you wanted to wear.
So you guys were like high priestess, sacred, like courtesans almost. That people would like visit this like brothel maybe?
Yeah, but we weren't allowed to do full service at all.
Okay.
So it was just sensual touch, sensual massage.
Oh, okay.
Chakra balancing.
Yes, officially.
And this was when Backpage was still around. So like they were advertising on Backpage. There was a whole bunch of forums that did all of that stuff. I had a little profile on the review board. My name was Akasha. Right? I mean, because why not?
That's so good for you.
The whole thing.
So good.
But yeah, so I did that for almost 2 years. And then the economy fell. Right? So 2008 happened and men turned into monsters. They wanted more for less. And that became really weird. So my clients weren't cool anymore. Only some of them were like my regulars. And then the rest of them were just really pushy. And I was like, this is terrible. Like, I don't like this anymore. So I got myself out of it. And shortly after that, it was busted by the feds.
Oh my God.
So I consider that kind of like...
The feds come into this like beautifully decorated house. The Anubis, like, what the fuck is going on?
I mean,
here?
it was so wonderful, like all of the different rooms, and we all had our favorite rooms. And there was one room, it was the Jade room, we didn't get to work in because the highest earner, her name was Jade, got to work in that room.
And to be Jade.
I know.
Well, this is a bummer. It got busted.
It was really sad because they were all so wonderful, and I, you know, still am in contact with some of the people.
Oh, lovely.
And yeah, every once in a while, a old client will message me on Twitter, like, I think your name was Akasha. And I'm like, it was.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You made a good impact.
Yeah, you know, like you do. When I was in that work, that was kind of like my first foray into any sort of like doming or fetish work, because you would invariably get the men that would come in. They're like, hey, these nipple clamps, could you do this? And I'm like, this is pain. Like, we're supposed to be about pleasure. What do you mean?
Could you like step on my balls maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be really cool.
Yeah. And so that was fun, right? Because it was like so out of the ordinary. You would usually just get dudes that hadn't been touched for a while, or like they were traveling, and then you would get this one dude that was just like, I brought you some shoes. Can you step on me? And we're like, fuck yeah.
Hell yeah.
Let's listen to Tool. Like,
so
it was great.
Started doing dominatrix work.
Very lightly.
Very
it was
little.
just kind of an interesting thing if the right person came in and asked in the right way, and it kind of made sense to me in that moment.
Yeah. It seems like a good way to kind of like train too. Did you have any experience like personally before you started playing with that with clients?
No.
Ooh. So that's great to have that kind of just like tiptoeing into it, being like, okay, let's like, what's fun? Like,
yeah, it's just like, what are you in? Like, what do you like about it? You know, like, is this, you know, during the hand job
Yeah.
or before that kind of thing.
And when do we arrange the chakras? Is that after I step on your balls?
My entirely most favorite part about that work was getting to do body slides.
A Nuru? Is that what it's called now? Yeah, when you cover your body in oil and you kind of like go on top of them and you're like sliding around. I haven't done it, but it looks like so much fun.
It's so fun because you can just like spend so much time just kind of moving around and just like playing your soundtrack and vibing out. It was great.
Okay, you left.
Yes.
Economy's crashing. Did you transition to other sex work?
Kind of multiple things. So I left that, but I was still performing as a burlesque performer. And so I leaned super heavily into that. I was allowed that because of my partner at the time. So we just kind of made a plan. I was like, I'm gonna kind of go this way and do this thing. I tried to get normal like 9-to-5 jobs, and it turns out I'm really adverse to uniforms.
We can both relate.
Any sort of uniforming, I just like, it makes me, I have like a lot of rage inside when they say that you need to be business casual. I'm like, do I look like business casual?
Yeah. Sydney's an Amazon. Like you
I'm
are
6'2".
You're 6'2". Right. Like you are like, and when you wear heels.
Yeah. Then I'm like
you
6'6",
are. I describe
6'8".
you if I whatever, we're bringing friends out. I'm like, you're literally like Wonder Woman,
Oh,
Amazonian.
that's so
That's like
sweet.
how always like when I see you, like that's what comes to my mind.
Thank
like
you.
were just like towering strong.
Yeah, so the business casual suit is
maybe not for a pencil skirt.
I mean, yeah, but then I kind of it turns into
It
a
looks
fetish.
too hot. I mean, it looked like Meg the Stallion in Dix the Musical. Like, I get you're a CEO. I get it, but you're too hot.
I did have or tried to hold some normal jobs, and they just didn't quite work out. And the economy continued to be terrible, right?
Yeah.
And so at one point, my boss was like, we can't afford to continue to keep you, and you should just go and perform full time. And I'm like, you can fucking do that. Yeah. But I was like, well, I guess I gotta fucking do that. And so I just leaned in super hard, and
wow,
that's how it was for a long time.
Where did you mostly perform burlesque professionally?
I was born in Seattle, so I was in Seattle, started burlesque in 2005. I performed all the way through there till 2014. And I was producing and stuff like that there. So all over Seattle in general. And that was kind of when my featuring started. So I started getting, going to festivals and being
like
flown
headlining
places.
kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So I got to do some traveling there, and then I went to New York and I did a lot of producing, and I did a lot of full-time performing, and I was there for another 5 years. I left New York on Christmas Eve of 2019 and back to the West Coast.
I have like a burlesque industry, kind of like a general question, because we spoke to Edie Eve about this. Did you ever run into any whorephobia in the burlesque community? Like when you would talk about being a sex worker or a stripper, did people like, or if you did like stripper moves or like whatever? I
was really lucky to have people, when I first started that were working at the Lusty. I had already been inside of the SuicideGirls kind of world. So all of those things kind of blended together for me. And I didn't really think anything about being whorephobic. And then also doing the sex work that I did, I was like, whatever. But yeah, I feel like there's definitely been a fair amount of whorephobia. I think when people want to call it like, I'm more glamorous than a stripper. I'm not like a stripper or something like that. I'm just like, you
don't really know the history of stripping.
Even the history of burlesque, right? Because like so many burlesque performers were also full service sex workers. That's where the term stage door Johnnies came from. Because they were at the stage door waiting to take them out. But yeah, it definitely, whorephobia is still very much a thing. I still watch it in newer performers that come into the industry that aren't in sex work of any sort. And so when they get into like my class, when I teach, and I'm like, you do know that this involves like titties, and they're like, they kind of have like a meltdown about like stripping, and then we have to talk about how it's okay, and like let's talk about your bodies, and let's talk about sex work, and let's talk about stripping and the whole art of like sensuality and sexuality, and it's okay, and maybe go home and meditate about it.
That's so interesting. I haven't really thought about that because we came up almost 8 years ago.
Yeah. Well, also, you and I have a theater background.
We do have a theater background.
And
I
so
also
for
think we
me-
knew what burlesque was.
But because of that, I think like you and I, like we were more like, is the costume gonna like stay on? Is it gonna come off when it's supposed to come off? Like I was always more worried about logistics and showing my body. Oh yeah, I'm naked, I guess, but I'm like,
Let's get there properly.
And I wasn't even thinking about being a burlesque performer. That's not where I came from at all. Like I was like there dancing to music I love because I started singing jazz when I was in high school because I was a nerd. I loved it so much when I went to my first show that I was just like, how can I just be a part of this? Like, holy shit. All of these like really gorgeous women are dancing to stuff I love. And so I just went up to the producer and I was like, how can I help? And she was like, well, we do need kittens and we need go-go dancers. And so I just started kittening. And then eventually I was go-go dancing. And then she was like, do you want to make an act? And I was like, that's terrifying. Like, but sure. And so I sewed my shitty little costume and my little money boa made out of fake money, you know, like.
okay, but I have not seen that though. I think you might need to bring that back. Can I say it's really interesting and impressive that you said you went to the producer and you asked, how can I help?
Yeah.
And not like, I want to be up there.
Yeah,
like
no.
like you were like, I need to learn from these people. I need to put in the work. And then you like did that.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm not going to like make a general statement, but like it's rare that I like hear that attitude. You're like,
It doesn't
how
happen.
can I help you? It's like, I want to be you.
Yeah.
Make me you.
Yeah.
And you're like,
It doesn't happen very often. And I think that's been how my career got to happen, right? Is that I wanted to just like show up and like just be a part of it. Like I wasn't looking to like be a star. I didn't care about any of that. I was just like, this is fucking dope. Like this is a movement.
I find that very interesting because that's not how people approach me personally, and I think like approach Kitty. It's not like, what can I do to help you? It's like, I want to be a star.
Yeah. It's not
Make
how
me
they
star.
approach me as a teacher or a producer. And that was always one of my biggest complaints. Like as a producer, people saying, put me in. And I'm like, you haven't sent me a video. You haven't sent me an actual email, not an Instagram message. You know, you haven't actually developed a little package to entice me to add you to this thing. You haven't shown up to shows. You haven't introduced yourself. Instead, you're just saying, give me this thing.
Yeah.
And for a beautiful art form that really, really needs people to genuinely care about it and not just want to be the most sparkly, the most famous, that has issue for me because this isn't an art form where we make a ton of money.
No.
Very few people get to make like an actual big livable wage on it. And even then, it doesn't last forever. I love performing, but still like the rate is still not high enough for what everybody else is making in the world, like as a wage in general. And the arts are always systematically undervalued. And I mean, sex work is still undervalued. Like the idea of you want me to do what with my hand in your asshole and you're only gonna pay me how much? Like, come on.
Did you ever work at a dungeon?
Yeah, I've trained in a dungeon very briefly, like off and on, and that was an incredible experience. I got to learn all sorts of stuff about bondage and, you know, various fetishes that I'm okay participating in.
Yeah.
And also I'm like, that one's not for me. That was a really cool experience because I know that a lot of sex workers that, you know, don't get to do training, it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a bumpy road. They're just kind of thrown into it and they're in the session, they're like, I fucking hate this, right?
Yeah.
But I had the privilege, I guess, of being able to be a part of sessions, doing various types of things so that I kind of know what I'm into and what I'm not into. And then I kind of put that away for a minute. But when I got here, I just kind of was thrown back into it in a way. Like it just like found me again. And also I just look the way that I do. So there's always somebody asking me to like slap them.
A side question. Have you ever done like giantess fetish?
People always want me to do a giantess fetish.
You would never think this. I had a big career online, so I would make videos, but I'm like, people must just come up to you and be like, swallow me, mommy. Like,
In person, they're like, will you pick me up?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
can I try to pick you up? Or I want to wrestle you? Or will you arm wrestle me?
Yeah.
Like all sorts of stuff. And it's actually the one thing where I'm like, no. The things that I'm into are more like bondage. And I just got to learn some needle play stuff. And that was really cool.
I know you want to know about that.
I'm curious. Are you actively doing sessions or you're kind of just like playing and still learning?
Yes and no. I do in-person exhibitions at venues, right? So when I am hired out, I will bring my giant bag of impact gear and I will work on people in person in a venue. Like you would just come up to me and say, hey, for this amount of money, will you sit on me? And I'd be like, cool, like, sure. And I'll do that for like 5 minutes and then move on to the next person. So it's very, very short sessions. And so that kind of gives you the opportunity to meet people and people that might be interested in you and your energy, right?
Yeah.
And so like there are some people that have reached out to me and that have wanted sessions. One of them, you know, like, yeah, I'm interested. I'm actually going to meet them like for tea because I really consider the idea of spending 3 hours or 4 hours in some sort of fetish session that involves a lot of impact and all of that, like to be something of an energy exchange. And so because I have, you know, my other performance and I'm an astrologer too, right? So I don't prioritize it. I feel like if the right people come along, I'm absolutely down to do that. And otherwise, like I focus on putting on events where I can also feature other DOMs to do that. So eventually, maybe I will get more into that.
Yeah.
But for right now, I'm like, you have to really like tickle me. Like
you have to be worthy
like you have to,
of worshiping SYDNI.
Yeah,
honestly.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I
And
love
like,
that.
And
Good.
and
Good. That's how it should be.
I mean, I love that like some DOMs are like fully in the life, right? Like they're really 24/7. They have, you know, their day slaves. They have all of that stuff figured out, and they have multiple, you know, clients in a week. And that is not where my life is.
Yeah.
Like I love my day job of getting to nerd out. And so if somebody like pays me to take away from that time to go and like beat them for a few hours and I like them well enough, then yeah, I'll do it. And then we also throw events. So there's an event that we've been kind of like dreaming of doing, which will have like multiple DOMs in one space to do live on stage performances with the sub of their choice. So like a 10 or 15 minute moment.
Okay, cool.
And then they will come off stage and then there's little like areas for them. So like with the St. Andrew's cross, a spanking bench, that kind of thing. I actually want to have like a shoe area where I can just like like put on shoes and like step on people.
Oh my God, that's so much fun.
Yeah, so that's kind of where my focus is when it comes to all of the Dom stuff.
Do you want to plug the next upcoming?
Yeah, it's on May 4th. It's in Berkeley. And if you either come to my Instagram or my Twitter, you will be able to find the link.
Gorgeous.
You mentioned a day job earlier, so I was curious
My
about
day
that.
job is just astrology.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
well,
ask
actually,
if it was.
it's astrology and I help run events. So
Okay.
I produce events like Lux, and then I also help run my family's astrology
so that's what I wanna know about.
conference.
Earlier you teased this, and so you
Yeah.
said your family has an astrological convention that's been going on for 40 years.
Yeah, we turned 40 this year.
What is that? I want to know all about it.
So it's called Norwalk. It's
Okay.
up in Seattle. 40 years old. It was started by my grandma. I guess I'd be considered third generation.
Like a legacy of this.
Yeah, legacy, but not by blood. Who I consider my sister. We met in kindergarten, became best friends, and then our families became best friends. And so then I was kind of absorbed into their family. So my best friend became like my sister. Her parents became like my parents, and they're all astrologers. So it was one of those things where as I was growing up, I always knew that it existed. I knew that it worked. And then when I was in my 20s, I started getting more interested in it again and started studying. And eventually I started asking too many questions to who I consider my other mother. And she was like, you need to take a class, like knock this off. She's just like, I'm tired of you texting me this stuff. Like, there's a whole class where you can learn this and you can do this yourself. And so I think she just understood that I really had like the drive to learn. So I really like starting to study like 5 years ago, but I started like formally training during the pandemic.
Do you see private clients?
I do.
Oh my gosh. Where do you see them?
Zoom.
Oh, Zoom. Okay, perfect. No one has to leave their house.
No one has to leave their house, and it gets recorded. So like they get to go back over things too, because there's a lot of information, right? Like there's just a lot of data, and sometimes it can probably feel somewhat invasive to people. It's like, oh my God, you're seeing so much about me at once.
Yeah.
I think that can be kind of an overwhelming experience for people that have never had an experience with astrology. You know, I typically try to temper it to like where people are at. Like if they've never experienced it before and they're just curious, I just kind of start at the beginning. If they're, you know, been doing stuff, but they want stuff about transits, like what's coming up in the future, we can go there.
I had a reading with you about a year ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so many things, we're talking about transits.
Yeah.
A lot of things were very impactful and happened honestly very fast.
Oh, shit.
After you said it. And maybe it's just because I was paying attention, or maybe, you know, you never know which it is. But the big thing that you said that impacted me was that year was a year that's very important for me to start using my voice. And I have never really done audio mediums until I joined the podcast in September.
Yeah,
and
which
it's
is later
been,
that year.
Life changing.
That's so cool.
So that was very cool.
I
and
know,
very
I tripped
special.
out when you told me. Like,
it was very big and like
oh, that's
magical.
so wonderful.
But I had a great time. So I cannot recommend like
Thank you.
any more highly. It does really crack you open.
It does.
But in a good way.
It can feel really vulnerable. Like I personally go to astrologers like maybe once a year, like around my birthday, like it's almost like getting a tune-up. And then like for really specific transits or things that I'm trying to do, I will see an astrologer that is specific for that. So like when I was moving, I went to an astrologer that does astrocartography to talk about the various places that I was looking to move and like whether those places would work for me. You can do it for investments. So like when my now ex-husband and I needed to roll over a 401k, we got the right day to pull out. And here's the wild thing about this. To roll it over, they have to send you a check and then you have to like go and deposit it into another place. It's like so weird because there's like an online and then they're like, here's a physical check. And you're like, what the fuck? Yeah. but in any case, this physical check came and something happened with the markets like very shortly after. And he went to deposit it and it like rejected. And so like he ended up not losing like $300,000.
Oh my God.
Because of like this like period of time that we were told not like to do this action. So it was almost like by pulling it out, we were saved from losing the money, and because they were in the middle of rolling it over, and so it didn't get affected. And I was like, that's fucking wild. Yo. It was so cool. You know, whenever people contact me and maybe what they need is something that is out of my purview, I always give them recommendations because I've been around astrologers for so long, right?
Yeah.
So like I know that there's people that I go through for like financial stuff. There's a couple of astrologers that I go to for horary. Horary astrology is the art of reading the chart of the moment to answer very specific questions. So let's say that you had put in your application to be accepted at Harvard. You could contact me and say, SYDNI, did I get into Harvard? And I would be able to throw up the chart of the moment and tell you whether you will get accepted or not.
What?
People can ask questions like, I'm dating this person. Are we going to get married? Did my boyfriend cheat on me? Where's the dead body? Those ones are cool.
Oh, wait. Have you personally had
a dead body one yet? No, I haven't done a dead body one yet.
But like, do you have anything crazy? Like you made something, like something came up and someone's like, oh, I think because you said this, like, I think I know for sure my husband's cheating, or because like this or that. Have you ever like had that moment with someone?
I'm in the middle of a 20-week horary course with a like.
Gotcha.
It's intense. It's so intense. Like we look at old horrors because it's like from like the 1400s. So we'll study old ones and the rules that were written by these like old stuffy white dudes, right? And get those translated and put it into practice. And so we do a whole bunch of like reading, you know, newer horraries, including finding lost objects, death horraries, like is my wife going to die soon? All sorts of stuff, like finding lost children, all sorts of different things.
Wow.
So
That's wild.
My partner actually asked me recently about a piece of architecture because they do fabrication, and they were feeling some sort of way about how it needed to be worked on. And they were like, am I going to be okay if we work on it, if we do this thing?
Ooh.
And so I was like, well, I don't think you should touch it when you do this thing, or else there's going to be an injury. And my partner got injured.
No.
Yeah, and it was kind of wild. And then some people will ask just about like job opportunities. Is this job going to work out for me? Like those sorts of things. You can really ask anything. I would prefer, like, I think on my site I say do not take medical horrors because that feels really like intense. But yeah, you can ask kind of anything.
I mean, that's just magic. That is.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Okay, because there's also like psychics. So what do you think about psychics? This is like not sex or related. I'm genuinely curious. Well, because like people go to psychics for these things, but I'm like, are psychics like using that?
I think it's just a different way of understanding how the matrix works. These energies are always interacting with us in some way, and some people can sense them, some people like smell them, or they hear them, or they have dreams about them. And also there's like geometric patterns in the sky that can be read in a particular way that can help you get the answers you need. Like it's just this like mathematical code that says Barbie, you know, kitty.
Wow. I need to know everything.
I know you do.
And that's why I got into horror astrology. Like that's why I'm taking the course. I was like, I need to know. Like,
that's almost like too much power. I'm a nosy bitch. Like I would be like everyone's lives. Like I need to know.
But there is a caveat to it. Like it has to be like a pressing question. You can't just like be flippant. And there are like horror groups on Facebook where like people ask horrible questions where they're just like, does my ex-boyfriend miss me? And they're like, stop asking these questions. You're not going to get a real answer. And in fact, like the horror will almost just be like, no, I'm not going to tell you.
That's petty. I love it.
The universe has jokes. Yeah. But certainly, like, I do think psychics exist. I have absolutely seen some wild psychics. I've seen all sorts of, like, very strange root workers. And also, I mean, I was raised by hippies. Like,
yeah, you've been around it.
Yeah.
Have you seen a ghost?
I have.
Have you?
I have like a few experiences. Wait, can you tell us a ghost? This is just now I'm like,
This is literally you just wanting to know what you want to know.
Yeah, it was when I was a kid. I actually was having a sleepover at my sister's house. And I woke up and there was like this weird mist, like green mist, like almost pressing on top of our bodies. Like,
wow.
It was wild. And I still remember it like it was yesterday.
I think like bringing it back.
Yes.
Bring it back to interview.
For sure.
We've kind of gone through your whole timeline. We've gotten up to today. Usually we just ask, are there any extra fun, intriguing, surprising stories?
No.
It's okay if nothing comes to mind, though. It's kind of on the spot.
I don't know. I've had a really long career of being naked in some way or the other, right? Like, oh, I'm just remembering a double.
Really?
It was so I had my first foray into phone sex.
Ooh.
Very recently. Yeah, because I'd only on OnlyFans had done like voice messages or like type things where people are like, I'm going to tell you a story about how I eat your pussy. And I'm like, fine.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so great.
Wow.
Actually, one of them was so bad at typing about eating my pussy that I told him he had to stop because it was clear he'd never eaten pussy before.
That's fucking fantastic, though.
I was just like, that's not how that works.
And then I take a big bite and...
and he was like, what do you mean? I was like, you don't do that with your tongue.
I just start tapping.
He was really mad. He was not, and we did, like, I ended up blocking him, but back to phone sex. I had this, I got to do a duo phone sex moment with a person who was hoping that I would just, like, join he makes all of these requests, right?
Yeah.
Not my client, my friend's client.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she was like, he wants me to, like, have this, you know, lesbian moment.
Oh, okay.
But he also makes it clear that like you need to have not ever had sex before
With each other or like being a virgin?
Yeah, more like I don't know anything about like lesbian sex.
Ooh.
I've never had sex before.
Men eat that shit up.
And his whole thing was like teaching her how to pleasure me.
Yeah.
And he spent like this was like a 2-hour phone call and he spent
Wow.
so much time on nipples. And he would like say, grab them with your first and middle finger and pinch and pull. And we were like dying. He never sees any photos of us, video, nothing. It's just us talking like, oh, yeah. And he's like, are you ready to come again? We're like, yeah. Okay.
I'm coming.
And and he's like, I get you to come so many times. You get us to come so many times. It's 10 times. I've never come so many times in my life before. It was amazing. And towards the end, I had lost my vape and we were like muted. And I was like, have you seen my vape? And she's like, and I was like, oh my God, it was just like the most ridiculous thing ever. And like, it was wonderful. And I'm like texting my partner the weird shit that we're hearing. It was great.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was a really good time.
What a beautiful 2 hours.
That's fantastic. Also, that must have been expensive.
He mailed cash money because
That's so not a smart idea.
No, but listen. He's an older man from the East Coast who does not believe in electronic money to sex workers. And so he takes the chance and mails cash dollars in the mail.
So you had to wait for the mail to get here, count it, and then you're like, okay.
Yeah, I got a call and she was like, okay, the money arrived.
Honestly, that's really cool.
It's really old school and weird, but I was like, I love this.
Money's money.
We came like 30 times.
Wow.
He would just be like, whenever you're ready, you can come again. I'm like, I want to know what this dude is up to. Like, he had a thing. There was like a saran wrap moment for him. Like we were supposed to. Oh, in the beginning.
That's a fun fetish.
Saran wrap her feet, and so her feet and her arms above her head. So.
Oh, okay.
So she's supposed to be doing this to me, and the best part is that I like unwrapped part of the saran wrap, and I pulled it off, and she looked at me like, "You're wasting saran wrap."
Put that back in the roll.
And I was like, it was to make the tear sound. I was like, stop this. We can afford $2 saran wrap. We were just sent cash.
I just imagine this guy like literally doing the dishes while talking to you for some reason. He's like, yeah, come again.
I think maybe
he's jerking it. Maybe not.
I don't know.
Honestly, I love that. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing.
I hope that it gets to happen again. I hope he doesn't find this.
I mean, I think if he did, he'd be like, oh my God,
the
person I've been talking to looks like this and came 30 times.
I mean, and he was kind. But he definitely did not think any woman knows how to have sex the way that he knows how to have sex. And it was very mansplaining, and that was rough for me. I was like, ooh, lock it up. Yeah. Lock it up for money.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to promote? Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter, SYDNI DEVERAUX. And then on Instagram, I am divine.devereaux. And if you want an astrology reading, I am the showgirl astrologer.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much for coming out here and sharing your story. And if you listen to this, please subscribe. If you're watching it, definitely subscribe. And if you listen, go watch it because...
Yeah, honestly, you want to see SYDNI.
You want to see, trust me. And you can watch on YouTube and Spotify. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Can you say something funny?
No.
All right, bye.
I want to know what Quaaludes were like. Every time I see photos of like the strippers from the 70s and then you hear about the parties, I'm like, oh, but what if we just allowed them back here for like a week?
Manufacture a few. Just a quick little bender for a week.
I just want to know.
I just want to know.